Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, I am Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. Search for the Hard Compound on any of those platforms. We put out 3 articles a day, morning, lunchtime and evening here in the UK. So do give us a follow so you don't miss out. Firstly, before we go any further, my apologies for the late start this evening. We got our time zones and technical issues all confused. Hold my hand up for that one. Thank you for your patience and thank you all for tuning in already. There's a good number of you tuning in already. We've done a few of these live interviews. They are streamed on our Facebook, our Twitter, and on our YouTube channels, where they are automatically saved in the video section on Facebook and the live section on YouTube. We've done over 100 of these. We've spoken with racers past and present and some up-and-coming racers from the world of touring cars, F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, endurance racing, and a great many who have crossed all of those in their career. The likes of Mr. Hans Stuck just 2 weeks ago. We've had we spoke with Mr. Mario Andretti, with Jackie X, John Watson, many others. But if you're a fan of touring cars, you're probably tuning in this evening because we have a legend from the world of Supercars and the BTCC, and he's had some success in single-seaters as well. So I'm going to stop rambling. We've waited long enough. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to a guest who is joining us for the first time from tomorrow here in the UK. The legend that is Mr. Paul Radisich.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good morning.
Great to be here. It sounds like you've had some fantastic names on the show, and great to be part of that.
Well, thank you. Yes, we've been very lucky. I'm all these lovely people, such as your good self, that keep saying yes, and I'm not complaining. It's fantastic to speak to some great drivers, and I've been wanting to sort of get you on here for a long time, but I had to bump into you at Brands Hatch for that. So, but thank you for your time at Brands Hatch at the Super Touring Power Weekend, and thank you for agreeing to do this. It's very much appreciated.
No, pleasure. And it's always nice to talk about. I get sort of one of those guys that never really wanted. Once it was finished, it's like, it's great. There was a good time and did what I wanted to do and all those sorts of things. And I think as years have gone by, it's sort of nice to remember some of those things, and particularly to go back to Brands Hatch, and it really was like living the day, you know, with the grid walks and the amount of people that came up and were just so excited to see the car and remember me. They brought their children along to say hi. I used to follow you when I was a young fella. Now my son's here or daughter. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic event, and obviously it was great. Particularly the guys. I think it was you and Greg Murphy must have travelled the furthest to be there, and it was fantastic to see you guys and guys like Alan Menu and all the other chaps.
It was. I think I know Greg was really upset because he'd had his bags lost and he'd lost all his gear, all his clothes. So he was sort of angry from the beginning, you know. So I think it turned out when he left.
Well, I mean, I suppose being angry might have taken a tenth off his lap times or something. You know, take it out on the curbs.
Probably a second, knowing Greg.
I did have a chat with Greg and. Going to hopefully sort something out with him soon. But no, absolutely fantastic to have you on. I actually was one of those guys. I didn't have my kids with me at Super Touring, but I was one of those guys where I was like, my God, that's Paul Radisich. Because obviously it was, I was one of the young lads who used to watch you race here in the BTCC. And it was very cool to have met you, and obviously very cool to speak with you now. Actually, while we're on that subject, we got a question in the comments from Mr. Kevin Whitewood, who runs the British Touring Car chat group on Facebook. Do go and check that out, folks. He said he had a quick chat with you at Super Touring. Will you be there next year, Paul, or is it too early to say?
I'd love to be back. I know the events now on the calendar. Look, it really depends on the New Zealand contingent going up, because Scott O'Donnell, who owns the car that I won the World Cup at Donington, owns the car, and 5 cars went up from here to there. So it really depends if the boys are keen to put their hands in their pocket and pay for, because it's very expensive to send the cars up there. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'd love to come back and do the event, and maybe something a little more competitive as well would be nice.
Yes, yes. I think we'd
It
all
was
have to
it
tell you.
was it was out of date in '95, so 23 is a big ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone watching was particularly bothered about who did what in the race. It was just great seeing all those old cars
It was.
again, and
It was. Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. I've just just seen a comment from Mr. Jerry Marnie, who I know you're familiar with.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Hi Jerry. Hope you're
he's
well,
ju-
mate.
he's just said you still can't get out of bed on time. That's very
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
very. We're going to come to Jerry in a minute because I spoke with a certain Sean Walker yesterday, and we're going to come to something he told me.
Yes. Names I know well.
Yeah, we'll come to that later.
Let's hope they don't
Um,
tune too much into the show. Yeah.
we'll see who's tuning in, won't we? Right, okay. Enough of the for now. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions, do pop them in the comment section. We'll see them in real time, and we'll try and work them in. Right. I suppose the best place to start is at the start, isn't it? Obviously, you're from a long, long way away from here, probably as far away as you can get before you start coming back. From down there in Auckland. I asked the same question to like Dick Bennett, who came on a couple of years ago. Where did your interest in motorsport come from, being from down there in New Zealand?
I'd like to say from Dick, but the interest came from from Dad.
Yeah.
Motor racing driver, businessman, but keen passion for motorsport, touring cars, Formula 5000s. We used to travel to Australia to do the Tasman series. So he was, it was a hobby, but he was into it. So when I came along and I started, I sort of didn't really go the standard route or routes. I went motorbikes to start with, so there were motocross in my early years.
It's
And
amazing how many people do. I spoke with Mark
yeah,
Blundell, Jackie X, and all those guys. They started on two wheels as well.
I think looking back, is really good grounding. Because motocross, particularly learning tracks, every weekend was a different track. Every time you went around the track, it was a different track because the ruts had changed and all those sorts of things. So you really had to think on your feet where was the fastest path. So that's how I started. So I did probably 7 or 8 years of motocross, maybe a little bit longer, starting in the juniors and moving up. And then I had an accident and broke my back, and it was sort of the time to go, well, I'd really like to start doing motor racing. So come on, Dad, what are we going to do? So we decided to sort of looked at the whole racing formula down here, and Formula Ford was sort of was dying away, and Formula Atlantic which was Pacific in America, was starting to boom. So we sort of threw all our money into getting a car, and I learned the road racing effectively in a Formula Pacific,
Wow.
single seater.
Wow, I mean that's quite a place to start on
Yeah,
like four wheels. I mean, most people go through the karting thing and then they go into
yeah.
something else and then they'll try, I don't know, go and bounce some buggies over some dunes or something. But you went straight into the single seat. I mean,
I don't think things have changed to what it was. It just wasn't, the go-kart scene wasn't that big here. The motorbike scene was. It's the start of the sort of Japanese flood of motorbikes that were reliable and all. I could just go racing effectively by myself. And as a young kid, we could, as long as you could get the bike to the track, which we're talking, I was 9 or 10, so it was always waiting for someone to come to the driveway to put the bike on the back of the trailer and take me away. So
yeah.
there's a lot of that. And so Dad was heavily involved in all that, so that's where the interest came. And then it was just, I realized that if it wasn't going to be motorbikes, it was going to be cars, and if I didn't race them, I was going to sell them. So we're a bit of a motorhead family.
No, absolutely. And that's never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. So as you said, you kind of got some money together and You went in the Formula Atlantics. I've just got here. You were basically like a self-entered team, weren't you? And you didn't have any, you didn't join a team, anything like that. But you went into the New Zealand Gold Star Championship quite early on, and you had
Yes.
a like Route RT4, which was a fantastic little car. How did you come
Yeah.
about that? Was it just a case of just getting any money together and finding a
Well,
guy? And
well, we would have been pulling things apart to be able to make the deal happen, and we're very lucky at the time. Mike Rosen, who was involved with Dave McMillan, which some of you people may or may not know. Mike was racing in the series down here, and at the end of the season, he wanted to sell a car. So my dad sort of negotiated a give you $1 and we'll pay you $1 a week type arrangement, and somehow it all sort of came together. So the car was left here, and that's when we came out and did the first races with in the national series with David Oxton, who was the champion of the day, and very much the respected and known driver. And we were able to sort of run pretty close to David towards the end of those few races. So it showed us that we had a little bit of talent for it, and it was something that I wanted to pursue.
yeah. I mean, I'm guessing when you went into it, you didn't have any expectations of winning, running at the front, anything else like that. But obviously, the progression through the season, the guys working on the car and you driving it, it obviously became apparent that you could do it.
Look, without my dad, was a very good engineer mechanic, and he built the engines, set the car, he did everything, and we just got a little bit of help. And like it literally was a family affair. Mum would be there. It was a family process. So without all that happening, we wouldn't have made the track, at all. So, for the first, to start to get going, that's how it was.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Even I had to do some work.
It's always a good. It's always a good way to start, isn't it? Keep it. Excuse me. Keep it in the family, and like a lad and dad situation, we call it, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But that sort of first year, I said that you took a podium in the first 8 races, which was in those first races. Nice to stand on a podium, in a small team. Just to sort of fast forward a little bit though, you moved 1983. I've got here. You moved to the Formula Pacific Championship with like Graham Watson Racing, which was alongside the Australian Drivers' Championship.
Yeah.
That was like a step up. Had you met someone involved in the team to help you get in there, or?
No, Graham Watson. A great little guy, just an enthusiast all through and through. He was the route agent for Australia, so we spent a couple of years running our own team and had some reasonable success. And of course, in those days, money was really tight, so we sort of every lap was on the rev counter. You'd run the lap, you'd run, you wouldn't look so much where you're going. You're watching the oil pressure gauge and the tachometer, so you didn't go over the red dial, so because Frank was like, if we lose that engine, we've got no spare. So if the oil pressure starts to go a little bit south, switch it off. So that's how we did our racing for about 2 or 3 years. And of course it pull the engine apart and go, right, this number 1 piston looks like it's a little bit, well, let's put it in pot number 4, and just, it was musical engine parts, and what we could reuse. And most of the parts that would go in the bin would eventually come out of the bin, go back into the engine. So we had quite a few years of that sort of thing. So when Graham Watson came along, it was the first time it's like, okay, boy, get in, drive the car, let us worry about the, don't drive the car on the oil pressure gauge, drive it on, show us what you can do. So Graham was very instrumental in helping me to get going and on the single seater path anyway.
Yeah, nice to have that freedom to sort of let just to go and race and not have to worry too much about the purse strings if it goes wrong and that kind of
You,
thing.
you can't believe how good that felt. Yeah.
Yeah, I can go and race.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Don't look at the oil pressure gauge. Yeah.
Yeah, look there.
Yeah.
Right, terrific. Um, just something I did see while I was doing the research for this. In that year, you were racing against a chap I spoke to on here about 4.5 weeks ago, by the name of Mr. Alan Berg, and
Yeah.
he said he might try and tune in tonight. So if I see it, I'll come and I'll make him say hello. But there was Alan Berg was in the series, and there was Christian Danner, who obviously both went on to do F1. It was a pretty strong grid, wasn't it?
The grids down here were always very strong. Not that large. The quantity was there, but the quality. Sorry, the quality was there. The quantity is never that way. There was always maybe 12, 15 cars. But as you say, in those times, Alan Berg, Davy Jones, Ross Cheever, the list really, if I haven't got the list in front of me, but the list will go on and on and on for competitors that came to New Zealand over the winter, and competed, and gave them a bit of a leg up for heading to the Northern Hemisphere the following season. So yeah, Christian Danner came down, and he was not long out of Formula One. And Mike Thackwell's. I mean, the list, probably, if you dig the list up, who've come down here, let alone Graham Hill and all those sorts of people, and over the early years.
Yeah, and there was some, years and years ago, there was some chap called McLaren and some guy called
Yeah,
Hull.
exactly. Yeah.
They went on to do a couple of things, didn't they? Those, yeah,
They sure did.
yeah, not bad. You mentioned about the move to the Northern Hemisphere. We'll come to that very, very shortly. One thing I did see though was after you'd gone up through the Formula Pacific, you went into the Formula Atlantic series, which sort of proved to be, I guess, a turning point in your career. It kind of gave you an opportunity. There was like there was the like Driver to Europe award, wasn't there? Basically,
Yeah, it
was
was.
the
Yeah.
carrot at the end of it. How did
Yeah.
all that come about? And were you determined to make it like a real good go of it?
Yeah, it was. How did it all come about? Formula Atlantic in New Zealand was Formula Pacific in New Zealand. Australia was Formula Atlantic in America.
Yeah, it
So
was that level, wasn't it?
yeah. So how did all? It was revived the Drive to Europe scheme, which was when Denny Hulme and Bruce McLaren were provided some assistance to go to Europe. That's what got them there. The car park money from the Grand Prix went towards helping drivers get over. That's how Bruce, Denny, and quite a few of the guys from that era got there. So the Drive to Europe was the motorsport man's down here put a little bit of got the award back going. There was a little bit of funding to help me just get airfares and basic living to get over to the UK. So at the time, Murray Taylor was floating around New Zealand because he was involved with Davy Jones running him in Formula 3. So when he came down, he said, "Oh, we'd love for you to come up to do Formula 3. Have you got a couple of $1 million?"
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure, Murray, no problem. So anyway, yeah, once again, we managed, dollar down, dollar a week, and we managed to get from to the Atlantic Pacific series here, and then shot straight up to do Formula 3 with Murray Taylor.
Wow.
Once again, it was we didn't have any money, so we had some schemes going in the background where people could donate, and we had a national raffle, which unfortunately all fizzed away. But at the end of the day, we managed to get, I think, 6 races from Murray in 84. I think 84.
Yeah.
And that was the year after Senna and Brundle, and Formula 3 was the place to try and move to the next level.
It was the launch pad for F1, wasn't it? Certainly in the 80s.
It really was, yeah. So the second race in Formula 3, I had pole at Thruxton.
Wow.
We had John Judd. Was John Judd? Yeah, doing the engines, and the routes. Everyone was in routes of similar cars, and I probably had the advantage of I've just done a season here, which was 6 races, and then to go straight over there and keep racing. Saying that Alan did as well, because he just finished the season here. So that was how it sort of started for Formula 3. Unfortunately, it only lasted 6 races, and then I had to come back to try and see if we could hoover up any money to do any more, and unfortunately, we're unsuccessful in doing that.
Yeah, it's always the money that talks, isn't it? I mean, everyone sort of, people talk about drivers in F1 these days saying, "Oh, they're only there because they've got the money," and it's not how it used to be. It's how it's always been, isn't it? If you've got the money, you can go racing.
Someone has to pay, and it's an expensive sport, and could have I tried harder to find the money? Probably, maybe not either. I mean, I was determined to try and get back there, and it took a couple of years to be able to get a group of people behind me to help fund me to do a 3/4 of a season in 1986 in Formula 3.
Yeah, no, sure. Just very good. I mean, you mentioned you were on pole at Thruxton. Thruxton is about 40 minutes that way from me. It's not far away. It's a fantastic circuit. Was it a circuit that you enjoyed? I mean, obviously you took pole there, so pretty good. Was it a circuit that you enjoyed in the F3 series?
Well, I'd never been to any of the tracks up until that point, so Formula 3s are not that powerful, but saying that, anything through church flat out, it's always a challenge. But Murray had the car very well set up, and it was my second race in Britain. The first race I did at Silverstone. Talk about experiences. I'm sitting on the grid. I don't know where it was, maybe 10th or 11th or something, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this white stuff started falling down on my visor, and I go, "What the hell's this?" Because it's starting to snow, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, it's going to be a red flag." No, it's like, we're on the lap, we're ready to go. I thought, "My God, the hell am I going to do here? We got any snow tires,
So we can't race in this. We've got chains on.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Who the hell races in snow? Anyway, I think we managed to survive that.
Fantastic. Just before we move on from that season, there was a chap that year came along and dominated, a guy called Johnny Dumfries, who we're all familiar with. Very sadly lost recently. Did you spend any time with Johnny? Any memories of him? Because everyone who has ever met him says he was just a lovely guy and very genuine.
He was just too fast.
That's the only problem.
It's just too fast, yeah. No, I never had much to do with Johnny. I would say hello, and So I don't have any experience with John, and other than seeing him at the races on the weekends. But I don't have any history there.
No worries, no problem at all. Just thought I'd ask, just in case.
He was further up the chain in all direction. Yeah.
Yeah, he had the speed, the backing, the finance, and
yeah. Very, very sad. He's left us way too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who had to be alongside Ayrton Senna in Lotus in '86, oh dear me, that's not an easy job.
It was always going to be a hard call, wasn't it? A hard position to take, to make the most out of, and he did. He did pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you mentioned before you returned to British F3 '86 and the Route RT30, cracking car, the RT30 and the RT31. What did you think of those cars? Were they
rubbish? Yeah, they were rubbish. I mean, the Route, Ron built some brilliant cars, but and when I say that, the car was, unfortunately, it wasn't quite. If there were Johnny Herbert, and because he was coming and going in the series, and there was a few guys there that were extremely quick in the routes, but the Reynard was, Andy Wallace was in the Reynards, Perry McCarthy, they were extremely quick in those cars, and it was the first of the carbon fiber chassis or composite, whichever way it was. and they were, they were just they dominated.
Yeah.
So we were all left behind. Martin Donnelly, that's who I'm thinking.
Yes.
Good lad he is, and
Yeah, well, I had Martin on a few weeks ago. He's on good form. Obviously, he's still he's still got the limp, but he still doesn't mind.
Martin was one of those drivers that if he couldn't go around you, he would go over you.
I'm going to send him an email.
Talent running out of everywhere. He was a quick boy.
Yeah, he was very, very good. And as you say, the grid, there was also, you mentioned that, and Andy Weiss, Johnny Hill, there's Damon Hill was on there, Maurizio Sala, and it was a strong grid, but again, it came down to the car, I guess, with the Reynard.
Really. The Damon and I were teammates with Murray Taylor in the routes, and we just inconsistent, really. And we got a podium, I think, at Snetterton or whatever, but it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, you did that part season. You did some racing back in New Zealand. You did some. Just from the research, you did quite a lot in a short space of time. You must have been flying all over the show. And there was like New Zealand. You did the Formula V series in the USA. I guess. Were you starting to think that perhaps F1 was a bit too expensive or too far away or anything like that? Were you looking at the USA at that time?
I didn't think anything, to be honest. Just wanted to go driving. It's like I sort of, as I gained more and more experience, I was after the US, after the UK, we were sort of like, what the hell are we going to do now? Because there was no more funds. There was the backers I had. It sort of run out of patience, I think, and it was a one-off arrangement. And I tested the Reynard at the end of the year and went like half a second quicker than I'd ever been in the route around there, and I could see it was distressing as well. But and then it was like, okay, what are we going to do now? We'll go back to. I went through to America. I had a good friend, Dave White, who was running a Super V team in America. And he said, mate, come over and spend a couple of weeks with us. So I went over there, and when we were there, he said, look, why don't you go and talk to Bill Simpson? He's looking for a driver. So I drove down to Simpson's race shop. This is how bizarre it is. Anyway, I walked into the shop, and there's Bill, larger than life, because he really was larger than life, standing behind the counter. And he went, Radisich, what are you doing here? And I go, I'd never met Bill or whatever. And he said, so I told him what I was doing. He said, look, do you want to? I've got a spare seat at Tampa this weekend coming. And I was standing in the shop in there on Tuesday or Wednesday, and I of course, what would anybody say? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next thing, I'm out the back of the shop. He's fitting me with a suit, and that night we flew down to Tampa.
Wow.
And I'm sitting in the race. Unfortunately, the engine in practice, we were quickest, and then in practice, the engine blew up. So I had to start last and work my way up to, I don't know, 5th or 6th or something. So that was my introduction into America. Then it was like, well, you better come back next year and do some races, which we did. And it's sort of one thing led to another, and then I did some Indy Light races with a guy called Kiri Agapu, some Trans Am races with in the Porsche, and we were sort of here, there, and everywhere. It sort of ended up being the reserve driver type of thing, and I was doing the Super V series as well, so I'd won a lot of races there. And I remember Dick Simon, who was running an IndyCar team, and I saw him at one of the airports, and I went up to him and I said, hi Dick, I'm Paul Radisich, and I'm doing Super V. And he said, bugger off, kid. Yeah, I know what you want. Go away. How much money have you got? Yeah. So that was how the whole American thing, and that lasted a couple of years before I needed to start to try and make some money or have a career in motor racing.
I mean, because as you say, I mean, it was a great experience, but I guess it sounds like it was never really going to come to anything, anything concrete, really, just because of the way the US was. And
Look, it was really, it was me. I didn't have a team. Literally, and then you go into countries, you really got no support, nowhere to live. You're living off people's hospitality, and can I stay at your place? And by the way, would you have a spare car? And all those sorts of things, which I spent years and years doing that. Which I think eventually it was like, Jesus, what the hell are we going to do here? So we sort of came to a bit of a crossroad, really, and it was like I had a program that potentially could have come to light for Indy Lights. And, prior to that, I'd spoken to a few IndyCar teams, Steve Horn and people like that. But, they were talking $1 million to get a ride. And, it was just beyond any comprehension. So
sure.
there was a program that we had for, Indy Lights. And then also at the same time, I had an offer on the table for BTCC from Alan Gow, and obviously there's a huge amount of story going back there with Alan. But at Crossroad, I had to make a decision which way I was going to go.
Right, and I read somewhere in the last couple of weeks or so that obviously Alan Gow, I didn't realise this. I think I know a little bit, but I didn't realise that he basically was really on board with Peter Brock, wasn't he? Back, the legend Peter Brock, and he sort of ran his team, and all that came together. And I guess was that your introduction to the world of saloon car racing, touring car racing, getting in with Alan, and how did it come about with the BTCC?
While I was doing races in America, I also kept in touch with the touring car brigade in Australia. So, and mainly Dick Johnson. There was a few times a Kiwi team, Bill Bryson, little BMW. We went to Bathurst. That was my introduction to touring car racing, and yes. I found touring car racing very easy, and also doors opened up a lot easier.
Right.
For whatever reason, maybe because it was down here, but anyway, I got an invite to run with Dick Johnson in the Shell 18 Sierra with Jeff Allen.
Yeah, fantastic. And, I love an RS 500, and whoa, the Shell one is just.
Oh, absolutely. They were just bullets on rubber, and you had to drive them.
It is a nightmare to find. It is a nightmare to find a photo of you driving one. I was trying to I was putting some posts out. I couldn't find one. All I could see was one of Bathurst in '88 of you in the pits.
Yeah, and luckily you didn't spend that much time in the pit. So that was the introduction. So Jeff was the lead driver. I was the co-driver. And as it turned out, we were leading the race, and because in those days, the lead Dick could jump in the second car, so that was the plan for the race. We were leading when Percy was tracking us down, but we had a good enough cushion, and then Dick was going to jump in the last stop in the car, and of course Dick is a lot bigger than Jeff and I. And he'd never practiced getting in the car. So when we stopped, he jumped in, couldn't get the seat back. And so then in a quick decision, so I can't get in, let's put Paul back in the car. And of course, it all took time, because it was unexpected. So we went from a good lead to about 25 seconds behind by the time I got back in the car and got out. So we managed to claw that back, but sort of lost the race by about 10 seconds. So that's motor racing, isn't it? So that was my introduction to touring car racing, and of course to drive Bathurst, one of the most challenging tracks of the world.
Yeah.
And finish
very high on my bucket list. It's just a long way away.
I know. Long way to go. So that's how it all began. So we ended up doing some races there, and then we did New Zealand as well, and I led the race. I passed John Bowe for the lead No, sorry, I'm getting muddled up. But anyway, I went from the Johnson team to the Brock team, and we were driving in Peter's car in New Zealand. So it's Peter, Brock, and I teamed up, and I passed John Bow in the Sierra and led the race, and so I had quite a bit of success in those cars. So while I was driving with Peter, Alan, I'd known Alan from many years before because he'd actually sponsored me when I was racing for Route Australia.
Right.
Hard to believe Alan put his hand in his pocket, but he did.
So that doesn't sound right.
No, I know. And he helped us a little bit in those days because he was involved in a Mazda dealership. So when I got to Brock's, Alan was running the team. Alan sort of got me in the team, really. So that's how our relationship blossomed from there. And then, of course, Alan was there for a few years, and then he left for the UK. Hence Andy Rouse.
Right.
So that was where all the connection started and came, and blew out from there.
That's really cool to hear the workings of it, because that's my era. I got into kind of touring cars 88, 89, and it's great I can just sort of picture it all going on, which is fantastic. We've got a load of comments and questions about touring cars and the BTCC, guys. We are going to come to that very, very quickly because we're into that sort of area now. I just want to say hello to Paul Linfoot, Mr. RS500, as he's known over here. He owns a Dick Johnson Racing Sierra. Along with many others. Obviously, he was at Super Touring. So, I hope you're well, Paul. Thank you for tuning in. He's a good guy. We like Paul Linfoot. He's a big fan of his work. Excuse me. Because your first involvement in the BTCC, I think 1990, was it Brands Hatch in the Labatt's RS500, the endurance race. Quite a car and circuit combination to start in the BTCC with, really, wasn't it? Brands in the RS500.
And I didn't get to drive it. With Lawrence, I think I did a few practice laps, and Lawrence Bristow invited me to join him, and Tim Harvey was quite instrumental in helping me get that ride. But unfortunately, the car failed, and we didn't get to drive it.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean,
but you were close and yet so far. Yeah, that's right.
In the paddock, weirdly, actually, I've got a few of the RS500 guys that I've spoken to. We've spoken to Carl Jones, who I saw was tuning in, Evening Carl, and Graham Good, Steve Coker, Rob Bravitt, and all these guys. No one has heard head nor tail of Lawrence Bristow for a long time, and it's a shame. We're not sure where he's gone. Because it'd be great to catch up with him, but. So hopefully, if Lawrence is around, he'll see this, and hello. If he does see it,
you're right. I have not seen since that day. I haven't really seen Lawrence again.
A lot of people haven't seen him, but
he must have got annoyed. Yeah, he must have got annoyed with me. So.
He probably got annoyed with Jerry Marley, to be honest. Sorry, Jerry. Love you, really. Yeah. We love Jerry. Yes, right. The BTCC, I mean, it all really started, the full kind of drive, 1993, as we know, with Andy Rouse and everything. Just before we go into that, I did see a question regarding Andy Rouse. Just forgive me while I have a quick scroll here. Chris Phillips, who is a pal of Andy Rouse's, so you've got to be careful. What were the differences between driving for Peter, Dick, and Andy, and did you have a preference? That's a shocking question, the last one, isn't it?
Look, I really enjoyed. For me, to get the gig, the Ford gig, and Andy running the team, and I mean, it was just a dream come true because road car was an RS500, the new Cosworth, and the shop, and to walk into the shop and see my name on the car, because the only thing I'd done in touring cars I'd shared, so it was always double names on the window, and to see my name, that was my car, and the way that the whole team went about their business, and how professional it was, and I mean, it was just to me, it was eye-opening, and of course the excitement of it was just unbelievable. You know, I was pinching myself to say, "Am I really here?"
Yeah.
And of course, you know, when that happened, you know what happened. We come over here, and you know, Andy was developing the rear wheel drive car.
Yeah.
It was going to be four wheel, and then it was going to be rear wheel, and eventually it was sort of, you know, decided it'll be rear wheel. But when we went out and tested the car unfortunately was too slow.
Yeah.
It's too much of a power loss, and you know, we missed quite a few races for the beginning of the season until it was decided that it's got to be a front wheel drive car, and that's how, you know, how it was. But yeah, I think, you know, it's a pretty hard question to answer, but you know, I really enjoyed driving for you know, the Andy Rouse team.
Yeah, sure. And there was a question from like Darren Morley. You said, what was Andy Rouse really like to race with and be your boss? I think you've just answered that. It was obviously just a
He was
terrific guy.
he was competitive, and he was angry. There was Andy, the quiet gentleman outside of racing, but in racing he wanted to win, and you know, I probably made it a little bit hard from time to time, and you know,
Oh, you have to, don't you?
he was fiercely competitive. You know,
Yeah.
you don't become a 7-time champion for you know, if you're not you know, if you're not competitive.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be competitive and know what you're doing, and Andy definitely falls into those for sure. Got another comment there about from Chris Waghorn. We're going to come to that very shortly, Chris. Oh, there's a question for the end. Yeah, we'll come to that one. So obviously, a delayed start to the season. I think people of a certain age, i.e., mine, early 40s, remember you coming onto the grid. Was it Pembury? Was it Pembury the first race you guys?
Pembury, yeah, correct.
And we thought, oh, these cars look good for starters, you know, and they did look terrific.
Yeah.
You went on and you took 8th in that first race. I mean, did you have any expectations or hopes or thoughts of how it might go that first race?
Look, I hadn't driven the car prior to that weekend, so I'd never driven front wheel drive, and
Wow.
let alone the car. So it was like Andy did the testing in his cars. Just by the time they changed it over and made it front wheel drive, there was no time to run the second car. So literally Pembury qualifying was, and a little bit of practice was my first time in the car. So there wasn't any expectations on for any of us other than, you know, if you can bring the car back, that'd be kind of good. So, you know, it was, yeah, I was thrown in the deep end, and had to work it out very, very, very quickly. And you know, obviously had a lot of questions for Andy, but you know, he was still trying to find his feet. He qualified on the first run. You know, he qualified, I think, on the front row at Pembury. So it showed us that the car had potential.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then for me, I just had to work out how to handle front wheel drive, how to look after the tires, and work out, you know, try and get a bit of a balance on that type of car.
Yeah, sure. It's amazing that basic qualifying was your test session, which is nuts, isn't it? That's crazy. Just had a comment coming in. Andrew Bishop said that 1993 at Pembury. It says after that race, the Mondeo was a rocket ship, and I think that's a pretty perfect summation of it. Certainly from us guys looking in from the outside, because just a couple of rounds later, or was it the next round? I can't remember. You took the first podium in the BTCC for yourself and for the car at Silverstone. That must have felt good.
Yeah, it's I can't remember now if that was an X-ray anyway. It seemed to take a little. We did quite a bit of testing after Pembury, and we managed to get a good direction on the car. And then you're right, the Grand Prix was a great one for me. I think I qualified third, and Andy was fourth, something like that. And it really, that was my first race that I think I probably got established in the driver order, because You know, I had everybody coming at me. You know, there's Winkelhock and Soper and
Yeah.
you know, I think I got attacked by everybody during that race, but I stood my ground, and I
Yeah.
think those are in the top end of the field could see that I was able to hold my own, and you know, I fought back, and then from there on, I didn't really get picked on too much.
Yeah. I think they realised that you had some rather pointy elbows, should we say? It was.
Yeah, that's it. I knew how to turn a single Mondeo into a double one pretty quickly. Yeah.
And yeah, and you touched on it. Yeah, the guys behind you, you know, were like Rob Gravitt and Steve Soper, which is obviously no mean feat. Keeping those guys behind. That race, I believe, is known for the one where was it Will Hoy and Julian Bailey
Yes,
attacked each
yeah,
other, and was
that's
it
right.
the
Yeah,
two wins? What was it? Keith O'Dore got his only win. You know, God bless him. And was it when Percy was second?
when
I mean,
Percy. Yeah,
it was
correct. Yeah, so
you
we we
you
we
you
we
must
were.
have been chasing him.
It was. Yeah, I do remember. And then because both Will and Julian went out, that made life a little bit easier, of course, as far as the podium went. But the car still wasn't. It was still lacking, and I don't think it was until we went. We were at Brands, and we were talking about tyres, and we had approach from Michelin, and they said, "Would you like to try our tyres?" And because at that stage, Andy was tied into Dunlop, and there was all sorts of reports coming back. So we said to Andy, "Would it be possible to just have a test with a set of Michelins on the car?" And we put them on at Brands, and straight away there was 2 or 3 tenths
Wow.
in it, and they were very consistent on the car. So we had a good discussion, and then, you know, I give Andy credit. He said, "Look, it's faster. We've got an opportunity to Michelin will supply." So we changed instantly over to Michelin. I'm sure behind the scenes it created a lot of drama, which I didn't really hear about, which is great.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do is go faster. So, and that was, I think, pretty much when we at Brands we won our first race.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And that was, I mean, it's amazing the the difference that tyres can make. I mean, obviously, I was quite young at the time. I didn't realise my first introduction to the tyres thing was Rob Gravitt with the Yokohamas in 1990 and all that kind of a thing. And he just went off into the distance, and which was fantastic. But excuse me, you got the first win at Brands Hatch. Must have been a great feeling. You know, given that you didn't get to race there in the RS 500, you came back and won it. Fantastic circuit, isn't it?
yeah, it was. Look, it was a short track, so it really, it's like doing laps around your living room. It's so small, but we managed to get in front at the beginning, and then just held everybody up for the rest of the race. So yeah, it was a very long race, and it turned out to be Ford's 200th win as well. So
Yeah,
that was a feather in the cap. So yeah, no, it was great to. You got to remember, we didn't have really any expectations on how things were going to go, and how how things would evolve. So there was really no pressure on anybody. We just got out there and did the best we could.
yeah, and it turned out to be
Turned
quite
out,
good.
turned out pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, seen was got Chris Phillips against this guy who's one of Andy's friends. He said that one of the biggest advances constantly in racing was tyres. Yeah, it makes a huge
Yeah,
difference. Yeah,
yeah, it was. Yeah, and everyone knows that. I mean, you go tyre testing, and in those days, hundreds of compounds and so forth. So you spent, we used to go down to Nagaro and test down there for a week on end with completely, hundreds of different compounds. So trying to find the best one that suit, short for qualifying, and then race duration, all those sorts of things. So yeah, tyres play. Without the tyres, the car's nothing.
yeah, absolutely. Just one thing on that first season. One that I remember watching was you win at Donington. Absolutely dominated the race. It was basically Paul Radisich, huge gap, and everyone else. I love Donington. It's a fantastic circuit just to watch. I've been taken around in a TCI UK car as well, and it's just ridiculous. I don't know how you guys do it. That must have been an enjoyable win, and going around Donington as well.
It was at the World Cup you're talking about, or?
I think it was in the middle of the season, towards the end of the season. Well, I can't remember. I just remember seeing it, and it was just fantastic watching you just throw it around.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I think, and look, in '93, the car was the car to beat at the end of the season. Come '94 was a different kettle of fish. The Alphas turned up.
Yeah.
Cars were starting to be more engines lower, further back, all those sorts of things. And of course, the Mondeo was V6 engine, very heavy, and it stuck out the front of the bonnet. So it was always extremely hard on its tyres. Didn't matter. I tried to work out, go fast at the start and then go slow in the middle, or go, slow at the start and try and get at the end. But you get to something like lap 10 and you just struggle for tyre grip. Didn't matter if you went fast, slow, or indifferent. So once again, Michelin come out with a carbon fibre sidewall tyre. And we did quite a bit of testing with that tyre, and it really suited the Mondeo because the tyre lasted longer with the weight up the front of our car. So, I was able to drive the car hard from the beginning to the end, which you couldn't do before. And that's probably where we've come out at Donington, and not only for, I think, the last race at Donington, but also for the World Cup. And the car went from being a third, fourth, fifth car to, a winning car, and that was the difference. Nothing else changed. We were just able to run the car harder and keep the tyre life there.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Love all that. I did see something actually while we're here. Someone did mention 1993. Where are we? Very quickly. Chris Waghorn. Evening, Chris. It said, great memories of the BTCC 1993 when Paul arrived with the glorious Mondeo. It was. Chris said he was at Alton Park for the Gold Cup weekend and said he think you retired with a mechanical issue and pulled over right in front of him. But he said, but I saw Paul win the final race of the season from the grandstand near the start-finish line. I was a very happy 8-year-old that day. A lovely memory.
Oh, that's great.
That's lovely.
Yeah, sorry, it broke down. We mechanical issues. I think that race at Alton Park, I think Andy broke down too, and we both broke down in the same area. So I remember Andy getting that game. God, what's going on with there's something with the Cosworth with the engines. It's like, I'm going to get on the phone with them on Monday morning, and they're going to get an earful and blah blah blah. So it was good.
No one. Well, by the sounds of it, I think Chris was pleased to see you break down in front of him, so he could see you up close. So that's not so bad, I guess.
I think you got to remember in those times when you're far too young for that. But places like Donington, we couldn't get into the track. Snetterton, you couldn't get in. Sort of either helicoptered in or had to stay overnight. There were so many people, and of course Murray Walker. Murray Walker doing the commentary. The action that was that was there because the racing wasn't live at that point; it was delayed. Picked out all the best parts of the race and built up so the interest in the racing was just phenomenal. And if you had to go and do corporate visits, he couldn't get from the pit lane to where the corporates were. He'd just get mobbed. So you had to, just things like that at the time it was he wanted to get back to the car and try and make it better for the next race. But the interest in British touring cars was phenomenal and around the world.
Yeah, it was unreal. I mean, I was 12 in 93. I remember 93, 94, 95. I went to a couple of races at Thruxton and Brands. And I remember being parked, being pushed at the fence and it says, right, don't move, stay there. I'll see you in about 6 hours. It was just because of the crowd, don't move, don't get lost. Just stay there, watch the racing, and hopefully I'll find you at the end of the day. It was fantastic time. Just another comment here. It leads us into 1994. Where are we? 1994. It was from Paul Ryder. Hello, Paul. He said, could you ask Paul, how frustrating was it when the Alphas turned up in 1994 with the aero kits and the wheel bearings, all the other kind of stuff, and all the other teams had to play catch up? That must have been properly annoying.
Yeah, it was. But look, they, at the time it was like, well, they've got wings and we haven't, and of course they said, well, it doesn't make any difference anyway. As it turned out, it did make a little difference. When we tested with wings on, we were nearly 4/10 quicker around Snetterton, I think it was, where we tested. So, it did make a little bit of a difference. In British touring cars, a tenth or two was enough to go from the back of the pack to the front. So, but look, they were ultra competitive. They ran a great program. They read the rules correctly. They did what it took. So, don't begrudge what they did. They were great to compete against, and sure, I would have loved to won the championship, but it didn't go that way. And you can like everything, you can only do what you can do, the best you can do it, at the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you don't seem too phased by it. There's a couple of people in the comments that are a bit annoyed by it still, I think. Alan Strachan, he says, he said that Alpha's cheated. Mark O'Neill, he's not happy with the illegal rear wing and the front splitter. Oh, it's all kicking off.
Yeah. Well, at the time, it was like, well, you can imagine, and then Alan was involved in the thick of it, because we were, one minute they were at Alton Park, and then next minute they packed up and gone away, and we're all happy about that because they'd had some points taken away. We were leading the championship again. It was all great. Then they got turned over, and and Alan was involved heavily in that, in that time, and particularly with the cars.
Yeah, but as I say, it is what it is. They read the rules, found a little loophole, and did it. But there's a few people who are still irritated by it 30 years later. It shows the passion we have for it. We love it. One thing I did say, going into that season, you were installed as one of the favourites, because I think a lot of people hadn't perhaps heard of you that much before you came in '93. And I did see a terrific line that you said. It said, "It took 10 years to become an overnight sensation." I thought that was a fantastic line. What a great thing.
I think it was more like 15, I think.
Is it 15?
Yeah. Stupidity. Just there's something that I guess the reality is for me is like, never give up, because you never quite know what opportunities are going to keep, going to be around the corner, and you just got to keep at it. Luckily, I was stupid enough just to keep going. Maybe I didn't want to have a real job. I think that's probably the reality. So
fair enough.
Kept at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to sort of go on from there, the next couple of years, it was kind of, it felt like from the outside looking in that it was 2 sort of like nearly years. It felt like the car was almost there. There was some top 4s, top 5s, on sort of podium bits and pieces thrown in. I think 95 there was just the one top 10 finish at Snetterton and things like that. But then in 95 you took a win. You took a win and a podium at Silverstone, podiums at Brands and Donington, and it was like the car was almost a real front running car, but it just didn't quite seem to fall right. Was that how it felt in 94 and 95?
It just got, there was the car, there wasn't enough development in the car. Sure. And from memory, Ford was sort of, I don't think they hadn't committed to Andy enough funds to keep developing the car. I mean, really, Andy started going down the 4-cylinder path, and then there was no money to do that, and things, which was probably what should have happened, because the bottom line is the car just got outpaced, with TWR coming in and Williams and people like that. The cars were becoming not road touring cars; they were becoming single seaters.
Yeah.
And engines were very small. They were going further back. The weight distribution was brilliant. Just everything. So we didn't keep pace with that. We still had the engine in the same position as where the road car sat, and you couldn't do much about that because it was such a big engine being V6. So it was all about tyre life. We just couldn't keep the tyres on. So things like the races we won were because it was easier on tyres. Silverstone was, on the shorter track, was sort of point and squirt, and we still had plenty of performance, but just couldn't keep the tyres on the car. So when we did, it was competitive, but it was very rarely. So the slide just got the slide for being competitive just sort of slipped away.
Yeah. I guess it was
Yeah,
just the increase in sort of the budgets from other teams as well, and all that kind of thing. It was just
they were the development of touring cars over that in that 5 or 6 year period was phenomenal.
it was unreal, wasn't it?
Yeah, adjustable diffs and and the aero and engines become half the size they were. Sitting right back into the tunnel of the car. If you look at some of the cars today, even the ProDrive 2000 Mondeo, man, is that a piece of engineering?
That was something else, wasn't it? It was a terrific car. Just before we move on from the Andy Rouse kind of thing, someone tuning in on YouTube, their username is SA323. Sorry, I don't know your first name, but he just said Brands Hatch BTCC 1994. Paul and Andy Rouse were mid-pack, but seemed to trade places every lap. Does Paul have any memories of that race? That's very specific. Do you?
It is. Yeah. I have trouble remembering what happened yesterday. Which track was that?
Brands Hatch, apparently in '94. Must admit, crikey, 29 years ago. Yeah, it was you and Andy just in there having a battle, apparently, but I'm sure that was fun.
Yeah. I'm sure it was. Yeah. Until we probably until I got back to the pits, and then all the fun would have stopped.
It was, yeah.
I remember Andy coming to me a few times. It's like, if you do that again, Sunshine, you're going to be in trouble, because Andy was paying my wages. Like, yeah, sorry, Andy, I won't do that again.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Which I probably did again anyway. So
yeah, more than likely. Good stuff. I'm going to mention the World Cup in just a minute. Unfortunately, where are we? Excuse me. Sorry. The Ford deal then went over to West Surrey Racing. Obviously, they'd done, Dick Bennett's had done very well, single seaters, Formula 3, and Senna and Barrichello and all these kinds of guys. I guess you sort of felt pretty confident going into that environment with Dick, even though it was West Surrey Racing's first season in the series.
Yeah. Look, I was sort of mixed emotions at that point. I had a contract with Ford, not with Andy, and I know those discussions went on about, well, what do we think? We're going to change teams and all that sort of stuff, and then it's the decision was made by Ford to nominate West Surrey Racing as the factory team, and of course my relationship with Dick went back many years, and known him for a long time, and of course I figured, well, it was Dick running the team, there was Reynard developing the car, and Schubel was in there somewhere, so it was like, okay, that on paper that's pretty good. Reynard, a renowned racing car builder, even though they hadn't done touring cars before, but they had some experience in that field. So on paper you go, yeah, that looks like it all could come together, and a great challenge. But as it turned out, it was shall we say, a disaster. Nothing to do with Dick's side of it, because he was given a car that wasn't, one, arrived late, it was just a horrible car to drive. So by the time we had sort of set about trying to make it work, which took a long time, of course, and we never really got anything out of that for that particular season.
Yeah.
And then it was there was all sorts of problems, and poor Dick was pulling his hair out because he's he's trying to get himself established in touring cars, and two, we didn't have the equipment to deal with beautiful built car, and it's carbon fiber everywhere, and it was left-hand drive, and I think we'd gone into the coupe at that point. So it was a fantastic looking car and finished extremely well. Just all the bits underneath didn't work.
And it's a shame because, as you say, on paper, it looked like it was going to be very good because I think Schubel had some. They built the Mondeo for the Super Touring or the Super Touring in Germany, and everyone thought this is going to be great. And well, as you said, I mean, I didn't want to use the word disaster, but you did, so I'll go with it. It just didn't. It was one of those. It's the old football thing we say, it's like good on paper, but like terrible on grass. It's the motorsport.
And it's like everything in motorsport. You have too many players in there, and then everyone starts pointing the finger, and it's the driver's not coming out of the corner fast enough, and then it's the engine hasn't got enough performance, and then the chassis not. It's just it sort of it all went round in a circle like that, which was pretty horrible, really. But we tried to do the best we could with with what we had.
Yeah, sure. Which is all you can do, isn't it? It's just people look at the results and say, "Well, that was terrible," but it's a bit flippant to do that. Just seen a couple of comments. Alan Strachan and Mason789 on YouTube. Evening, guys. Both mentioned Andy Robertson. Obviously, you had that unfortunate coming together at Redgate, wasn't it, at Donington, where he spun and you couldn't go anywhere. But which people seem to sort of say, "Oh, teammates take each other out." It wasn't. Come on, guys, grow up. But they both said, "How did you rate Andy Robertson as a driver?" He said that he said it seems like he's known now for being Kimi Raikkonen's manager and owning a race team with him.
Steve Robertson. Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, I enjoyed Steve as a teammate. Yeah, and he's he's Formula 3 champion, and once again, he had a couple of really good rounds, if I remember rightly. Struggled to keep up with him, but once again, we didn't sort of have the car to really show everybody what we could do, and particularly Steve being first year in there, found it pretty difficult, and it was a pretty challenging car to drive.
Yeah. It just seems like you didn't have the tools to showcase what you could do, unfortunately, which is.
No, I remember him at Brands. He was very quick. I couldn't match him around Brands, and I think in the race something happened to his car, so I finished ahead of him. But on occasions he was a very quick driver.
Yeah, good stuff. Andrew Bishop's just said, I met Paul and Steve Robertson at a local Ford dealership in Plymouth in 1995, the first year of the WSR program. Well, I went to university in Plymouth, so I think I know which one he means. But no, again,
I couldn't tell you. I did so many dealer appearances over the time that I think I was every weekend somewhere.
Yeah, all over the country. Yeah. But you can do a lot worse than Plymouth. I love it. It's a great place. I think I was at university, so that's a bit hazy. Don't tell my parents. Yeah, I mean, that was 96, but 97 it was slightly better, but similar problems, I guess, with how it with how the cars were. Did you have many? I mean, when did you decide that enough was enough? In the nicest possible way with West Surrey Racing.
Yeah, I think 97. Yeah, end of 97. It was like, what's on the radar for the next year, and sort of Dick was starting to get himself more established, sort of understanding the cars a bit better, and but we were still in the same sort of position. So at the end of that year, I sort of thought, well, I think I need a change, and that's when Peugeot opportunity came along, and it was like, well, they're not, I'm not really going forward with equipment here, so what are we going to do? But the Peugeot program was going to be 1 year of sort of getting by with what they had, and Tim in the other car. And then the following year was going to be all the French equipment. They were going to move into using all the French cars and so forth. So I figured, because they were dominating in Europe,
Yeah.
and I figured, look, for one more year's pain, then we might have one good year of having the right equipment.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how that thought process was
Okay.
going.
Which is fair enough. I mean, again on paper, it looked like a pretty solid bet. Obviously with Tim Harvey as well. He'd been champion a few years earlier, and Tim knows his way around a touring car. And I'm guessing you got on well with Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we just hold for 1 minute? I've got someone banging on the front door. I need to just. Could you just? I'll be literally.
No, not a problem.
1 minute.
Not a problem. Not a problem. This is all very good, isn't it, folks? What a legend. We love Paul. He's such a nice chap. Andrew Bishop, Vosper's. Yes, I do know Vosper's dealership in Plymouth. I know very well. Been past it a few times. But thank you everyone for all the questions and comments. I am going to come to them. They're all on the right-hand side of my screen. So I'm going to come to those very, very soon. We're just going to wrap up the touring car bet. Then we're going to head down under for just some hand-picked bits from Supercars and Bathurst, and unfortunately a couple of accidents. And then just what Paul's been up to recently, some fun questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So thank you for staying with us. Very much appreciated. Again, apologies for the late start. Hope it's been worth staying on for. But yeah, while Paul does his front door stuff, I'm going to have a cup of coffee.
Sorry, mate. I have got a big house. So it takes a while to get to the front door. No
problem. No problem. Hang on.
Yeah.
I've got the refill tank on the coffee. Right, there we are. So Peugeot with Tim Harvey. Someone's just said Tim knows how to eat cake. Oh, that's not fair. Come on now.
He likes his food.
And good, why not? And why not? He doesn't need to worry about diets and stuff these days. Good lad. So yeah, the Peugeot thing on paper, it looked good. And someone actually said on one of the posts I put out on the page in this last week, they said that you did things in that car that we had no right to do. You was fourth at Silverstone, and you were running up at the top end, but the car was really hit and miss, wasn't it? Again, it was one of those seasons where it felt like it should have been better than it was, perhaps.
I don't know, really. I think that's probably about as, we knew where it was. We had the occasional, flurry of something or other, Tim and I. So rather than running into each other, because which we managed to avoid a little bit. So, but as we knew that where the car was where it was, and it was really all about the following year. As far as I was concerned, anyway, it was like, get through this year, do the best we can, and if we hook into the French program, we could be onto something. So yeah. That's But as it turned out, at the end of '98, Peugeot UK pulled out.
Right.
So I had a 2-year contract with them, and so they were gone. So
was what it was.
That was it. Yeah. What the hell are we going to do now?
Yeah. Well, let's see. So a comment from Pete Banham. He said there was a different front end suspension on the French car than the UK car. There you go. I didn't realise that. So there you go. Maybe there's something in that.
Yeah. Look, I think everything was, whatever. It was winning in Europe. Put it that way.
Yeah, it was doing very well.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe that was all ILO, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, could have. This is a final thing on that. If it's, I don't think it's any consolation at all, but it's one of the best looking touring cars from the Super Touring era. I mean, it looked brilliant, but
But
no
which one, the
competition when you're
Peugeot?
driving it, I guess.
Which car?
The Peugeot, the
Oh, the
green and
Peugeot.
gold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, everyone loves that. It was, yeah, fantastic, fantastic looking thing. Um, where are we? Very quick one. In regards to the engine, I read a piece recently that said the MSD guys had to do 6 engine installs in one weekend at one point. Crikey. Yeah,
Sounds familiar.
blimey.
Yeah,
Goodness
I'm
me.
sure I'm sure I got blamed for that one too.
Blame the guy behind the
Hey,
wheel. It's, yeah.
look, I was always known for driving the cars hard and hard on equipment, but that was I gave everything that I did. I gave it 100% or 110, sometimes 115, which you go a bit too far. But it's if it's there, it's provided. You got to get the best out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very quickly, Mark O'Neill, was that the 406 or the 405? That was the 406, wasn't it? The 98 was the 406. Yeah,
406, yeah,
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 smashing car.
yeah.
Before we go,
Patrick was on the 405, and then
that's it.
I stole his seat, which he's never forgiven me for.
I'm sure he has. Come on now.
No, he hasn't. No,
Has he not?
no, no.
I'm going to try and get in contact with Mr. Watts.
Yeah, you must. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know his daughter's racing now, which is very good. Amy's doing some racing, which is great.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Just,
Which is great.
oh, we've got to say hello. We've got Mandy Gravett. Hello, Mandy. Very lovely to see you. It says, hi, Paul. We go way back.
Huh?
There you go.
Well, not that far back, Mandy. But hi, Mandy. Good to hear from you.
Halfway
And
back. There we go.
halfway back, yeah. And I haven't seen Rob for quite a while, Rob Gravett. So I was hoping I'd see him at Brands, but he wasn't there. I saw Jeff
Yes.
Allen and quite a few others. But great to hear from you, Mandy.
Yeah, smashing. I did actually have a message from Rob Gravett earlier, which I'll talk to you about when we're off air. All good. We've got to talk about Monza very quickly before we head into the supercars side of things. Monza, the World Cup, the Touring Car World Cup thing. You went and upset the locals in Italy with the Alphas and all that. Did you set the car up differently? This was the Mondeo. Did you set it up differently? Or did you just go and give it a blast?
Yeah. Just went out and went round. That race was quite interesting because, well, getting there because a couple of weeks before we didn't have an entry. They weren't going to accept because there was no New Zealand team. There was only me. So it's like, well, there's no team, you can't enter. So Alan got that all organised. Alan Gow got that organised. So because we were so on form at the end of that '93 season, it was like, well, you've got to have Radisich in there, otherwise, whatever he said, it worked. So the last minute, like literally that week before, it was like, okay, well, you're going to Monza. Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Where's Monza? So,
I've heard of it, but
yeah. So anyway, we shoot over there, and because I've never been on the track or done anything, I don't think I even walked around the track. So we hit it on whatever it was, the Thursday, and lo and behold, we're the quickest on Thursday. And I'm looking at the entry list. I'm going Stefan Modena and Tarquini, and
Pero was there, and was it Nannini, and
there was 19 Formula One drivers in the
Nicola
field.
Larini was in there, wasn't he, and all that.
All the Renis were in there. Yeah, they were. It was definitely going to be an Italian winner. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So then there's me with this. All of a sudden the car just worked around there. It had good performance, and I was able to use the curbs, and no one else really was able to. The Mondeo was, Andy built such a strong car, because if I could drive over anything, I would. And I've shortened the track up by about 1 kilometre. So it just worked. It just worked, straight line speed and so forth. And I had the experience to handle that, handle it, and I was probably, coming out of the UK. I was on top of my. I was on top form
Yeah.
in every way. So took made the most of it, and we ended up, as we know, winning two, both races and pole position, and as a team, as a single car team, we ended up coming third in the teams championship. So
Amazing. I mean, that's
some days you're lucky.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've got Alan Strachan. He's just said it was the best race. It was a fantastic weekend. We've seen the footage, and it's absolutely fantastic.
It was for us. I think the only issue I had through the whole weekend is I uh, sprained my left hand. I think it was.
Okay.
And it must have the wheel got caught, and my thumb got caught in the wheel, or something happened in it. So I was carrying an injury, and it was quite uncomfortable. But hey, other than that, it was a walk in the park.
Yeah, fantastic. And then you went and did it again the following year, obviously, as you did. Just a
Yeah,
single race, and you went and won again. I mean, just as a circuit at Monza, it's one of those. I mean, it's relatively unchanged down the years. They've done a few runoff areas, and I think they've decided which way the first chicane should go now, right, left, and because it went left, right before. It's always looked like a fantastic. I mean, I've been around it in a Fiat Panda, which I'm not so proud of. I was on holiday and I thought, oh yeah, Monza, and I had a hire car, a little Fiat Panda. I was going across to Venice for a week, and I took it round. I paid about €35 to take it round the circuit for half an hour, which was about 3 laps. In his Fiat Panda, and it was fantastic to say I've driven Monza.
yeah.
People were looking at me going, "What on earth are you doing?" Wasn't covered by the hire car insurance, but never mind. At proper speed, what's it like to drive around Monza? Because it just looks like a fantastic circuit.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't find it that technical,
Mhm.
and it was a pretty easy track to learn. I mean, as far as it being, the surface is smooth and the runoffs and things like that. But look, it's just one. It's one of the. Let's face it, the history there. The
Yeah,
old track, the banking. And I think it's more about its history than anything else. And the chicane's changed now. I think, isn't it? Turn one's different to what it was.
yeah, it's right, left now, whereas years ago
Yeah,
it was left, right, wasn't it?
that's right. Yeah, correct. So,
Yeah,
but it's just to be there and to soak up all that history and atmosphere. To me it was more about
yeah,
that than the track itself.
yeah. And of course now just to be just to be a small part of it as well, having won a couple of times in the
Okay.
World Cup, which is very nice. Just very quickly, Thomas Lloyd, this is a nice message. Hi guys, I'm Dave Brody's nephew. Just wanted to say, big fan of Paul's, especially the Mondeo era, and some kind words about the podcast. So thank you, Thomas. We had Dave Brody on the other week, as I'm sure you'll know, Thomas. So if you want to watch that back, it's in the video section. Always lively with the Brode. We love him. Right, so you've come. Actually, one more thing. I did mention Sean Walker. I spoke with Sean Walker yesterday, and from the look on your face, you know what's coming. He mentioned something about your stag do in London,
Yeah.
about your stag party.
I
And the
don't
fact
remember a thing. You'll have to ask Sean about all that, because
oh, he's
literally I passed out in the
yeah.
first hour, so I have no recollection of what happened. But they tell me it was pretty ugly.
He's told me. Um, I'm not, because you're not a big drinker. Apparently, it was him and Jerry Marnie and Rob Gravett and a few of the others decided that you were going to drink on your stag do.
Yeah. Well, it was mainly Alan Gow. He decided to
Which,
to spike it up a little bit with the help of Gravett and Alum, and yeah, you name it. So they
yeah.
they got me big time.
Yeah,
Big time.
Sean did say that he felt sorry for you. I'm not going to go into details, but the word projectile came up, and clogged. So we're just going to leave that. Read
I
into
don't know.
that
They
what you
had
will,
they
folks.
had a good time. Yeah, they had a good time. But I can tell you, the following day, I don't know if I needed to go to the hospital, or. And it was good of them to really look after me. I think they just put me in the corner and left me there for the rest of the night.
I think they looked after you for about 20 minutes by the sounds of it, and then just
I mean, 5 minutes more like it. Yeah.
Yes, London
They,
wasn't the same the following
I
day.
can tell you something. They ruined a good night.
Yes, I'm sure that's the problem with stag do's, isn't it? Someone always suffers. Yeah, maybe some more details on that later on. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right, so obviously your time in the BTCC has come to an end. I guess it was time to head. Was it just a case of wanting to go back to your side of the planet, or was it just an opportunity that came up with Dick Johnson?
Yeah, literally. There wasn't any. The teams were leaving BTCC left, right, and centre, and there just wasn't in a. Maybe I could have looked in Europe or moved to sports cars or something, but at that particular time, the deal come up with Dick Johnson Racing, my history with the team and all that sort of thing, and I thought, well, I probably need a year of sunshine. To be based on the Gold Coast, and it
After
was like,
6
well,
years of going.
let's go down. Patsy and I, let's go down for a year and thaw out, and get our thoughts and see what happens. So it
Probably a
was
good move.
literally that.
Yeah, probably a good
Yeah.
move. And obviously we've got a lot of BTCC fans in, Supercars fans. I've just handpicked some of your highlights, a couple of lowlights from the Supercars. I mean, there's so much we could have gone into. We could be here for hours and hours. I'd love to be, but can't really. But I did see that you took. I mean, obviously it was a case because you were developing the Ford Falcon, weren't you? It was the new Ford Falcon. And you were sort of getting to grips with it. Was that the name of the game for the first year? Was it just let's see what we can do with this and just develop it and see where it goes with perhaps an eye on 2000?
Yeah, it's definitely a pattern, isn't there? Yeah, when I went down there, once again, Ford had not really been involved heavily with supercars. They'd pulled out, and they're just sort of starting to come back into it again. And Holden had stolen the really worked hard on having a really good package. So we were a little bit behind. The EL, I think it was a pretty good car, and Dick and John Bauer developed it pretty well. So the AU was a completely different shell, different aero package, and literally designed on the back of a cigarette packet. It was the only thing was good for us when you went off and dug into the gravel and moved the gravel around like a bulldozer. So there were some big issues with that car, but yeah, we managed to get on top of it, and by the end of '99, we were heading for Bathurst, and we led Bathurst all day, and we were sort of the car to beat around Mount Panorama. So we'd gone from something that was a bit of a struggle to something that was pretty quick.
Yeah, it's safe to say that development went rather well.
Yeah.
And you managed to haul it onto the podium 3 times. Was it down at where was it? Like Wanneroo and Sandown and Winton, brilliant circuits. But then Dick Johnson retired from racing that year, didn't he? I mean, must have been pretty proud to have had him as a teammate, because obviously he's a legend, isn't he? I mean,
yes. Yeah, and that was it was a great year, and that was probably part of the attraction of going back down and being Dick's teammate, and the love and admiration for Dick around the country, because as we went around, everybody wanted to be involved in functions, every event, and it was a goodbye tour. So he's very popular in Australia. People love him, and it was just great to be part of that goodbye tour.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a nice way to put it, isn't it? A goodbye tour. That's lovely.
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, proper legend. I mean, obviously growing up, as a kid watching, we only had the Bathurst 1000 here, but it was Dick Johnson and Peter Brock were the legends. They were the two guys that everyone knew. Yeah, very sad when when Peter was lost. Yeah, proper legend. Just want to touch on 2000. You got your first win in the series at Sydney. Again, must have felt pretty good. Get that first Supercars win.
Absolutely, and look, any win's a good one, and the Australian series is always, growing up there, it's always been competitive. The likes of Mark Scaife and Larry Perkins in the day, and Peter, of course, and Dick,
Glenn Seaton, I remember. Glenn Seaton, yeah.
John Bow. I mean, it's always been one of the most competitive championships, in the world. V8 Supercars, and as it is, still today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got Thomas Lloyd. He said some of the Australian tracks are some of the best, especially the street circuits. Absolutely agree with that. Some terrific circuits. Just very quickly, 2000. I mean, you got on the podium at Bathurst again, but it was those three Holdens out front. Again, I remember it. It was Scaife, Tander, and Lowndes were the three guys in the Holdens. I mean, they got it dialed in that year, didn't they? They were incredibly strong.
Yeah, they were. And, we'd gone from sprint races, 20, 25 lap sprint races, to these races that seem to go on forever, 1,000 kilometers and 500k and 250k, and they were mammoth events to do. The preparation, you had to be a real athlete to get through, and of course in those days the fumes were quite bad in the car, the ventilation wasn't great, the heat was terrible. There was things you had to cope with, which the boys don't have to so much today, because cool suits and all those sorts of things. So it was a real challenge to get to the end of those events. Sometimes just to finish was a result, let alone winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the subject of winning, the following year, I mean, something that I don't think is discussed nearly enough when we're talking about touring cars, you had your hat trick. You had 3 wins. At the Wanneroo Raceway. It was just one of those weekends that you qualified 4th, and then 3 races and you won them all. Did you see that coming that weekend?
Never see anything coming, to be honest. No, I think memory. We had some new things with the new bits with the car. I think with the engine, particularly with the trying to dull down the performance of the engine under low acceleration. Because it would either come on like a light or not. So we managed the engine boys come up with a way just to sort of smooth that power torque out, and that really helped us, particularly around Wanneroo. But we were always there or thereabouts. It's just sort of come to pass that weekend it all sort of came together.
Yeah, it certainly did. I mean, I remember hearing about it at the time, but when I sort of looked back over it and saw some footage of it, it did fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. It must be one of those you look back on and think, oh, that was a high point. That was one of the high points.
I think it was one of those things like, how did that happen? How do we, it's like debriefing at the end of the weekend. Okay, well, how do we continue this, this direction? What have we done differently? You go through the whole process, and I think at the end of it all, that's probably about the only thing we come up with that might have helped us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, brilliant stuff. Obviously, I don't mean to skip over things, but I'm just looking at the time and things, and this. Just want to fast forward to 2005, and something that would be scowled at these days. I don't know what it was like then, but you moved from Ford to Holden, which 2 big fan bases, Ford and Holden. I remember some of the old BTCC guys, like Matt Neal and guys like that. Matt Neal said he was driving. I'm sure he said he was driving a Ford and he broke down on the mountain at Bathurst, and there were like beer cans from the Holden fans when they were camping, and it was almost coming through the windscreen and stuff. He said it's really tribal, Ford and Holden, and it's one of the great rivalries in motorsport. And you went from one to the other with the Team Kiwi thing, and I think a lot of people, I think it caused some raised eyebrows, should we say?
Yeah, I didn't get any death threats, so from that point of view, it was okay. But
no beer cans towards your head or anything.
Yeah, I think Craig Lowndes had sort of, because he'd moved from Holden to Ford So
Yeah.
I mean, Peter Brock did it years ago when he went from Holden to Ford, and I mean, so people were a little bit conditioned, and then once Craig had done it, it wasn't such a big deal, and
Wasn't quite so bad.
yeah, it wasn't so bad. It was one of those. I mean, I would have loved to have stayed with with the Ford brand at that point, but there was just wasn't the opportunity, and Team Kiwi Racing was. There was it was a new team that was coming up, and wanted to be part of something that was from this end of the world.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was hooked into a Holden, with Paul Morris Racing. They were preparing the car and keeping it together, so it's just the way it went.
Yeah, it felt like the right fit at the time.
Yeah.
Which is always good. We have a gut feeling about something. And it went pretty well. And obviously, you said it was a young team. And you went out to the Shanghai round and stuck it on the podium.
We did. Yeah, we did.
That's the first. I believe that was the first podium for the team, wasn't it? That must have been a nice little. I guess
was brilliant.
Like a pat on the back, I guess.
Yeah, it was. The only thing was I had bad food poisoning and picked up. So we ended up being third on the podium, and I couldn't make the podium because I was detained out the back, shall we say?
Giving a toilet a cuddle or worse.
I was like, quick, get me something. Get me more than a bucket. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh dear. I suppose it's there's a cloud in the middle of every silver lining or something, isn't there? It's
something
but
like that. Yeah.
It's still a nice result, and ended up 15th, which is the highest, highest position for the team ever. 2006. I mean, it was a similar tale. Pretty sort of solid season, some decent results, good progress. I guess it could be said that the car was off the pace, but as a young team, I suppose it was going to be. But unfortunately, 2006, it was actually mentioned by the Team Kiwi Racing guys today on the page. The accident at Bathurst, it's kind of characterised that season for you. If you Google Paul Radisich Bathurst, that's what comes up.
Yeah.
You really bashed yourself up, didn't you? And it wasn't your fault what happened, the accident. But I was just wondering what was going through your mind when that wall was coming towards you, because
Yeah, I think for Bathurst, for me, it's been like I was a crash dummy for safety. The safety rules around Bathurst. I think I tested pretty much every wall around there, and unfortunately for that one, there was an earth bank, and which shouldn't have been there. It should have been a tyre wall, or like they've done with it now. Sort of disposed of it completely.
But also the angle of the barrier as well. The angle didn't
help.
help.
Yes. So as a just as an earth bank with a few tyres, and what happens when it come out of the chase, there was a car up the inside, and we just touched, and it broke a steering arm. So it just shot the car hard left, and fault not, at the end of the day, I was driving the car and trying to make a manoeuvre around probably where I shouldn't have been, but it's a decision you make in a split second, and so I shot the car straight off into the tyre wall. So from memory, the only thing I remember is when the car hit the wall, it turned upside down.
Right.
And I could feel something running down the back of my neck, and I thought, oh my God, it's fuel. Luckily, it was only water, but so I was sort of sitting there for a minute, completely winded, because I'd broken a lot of bones, and
it was a sternum, wasn't it?
There's obviously a lot, and so I was fully winded. I couldn't breathe, and I got water running down the back of my neck, thinking it's fuel. I thought any minute now it's just going to ignite, and that's the end of it. So that was pretty horrible for for what seemed like an eternity. And then luckily the people got there and managed to get me out of the car. But yeah, not a good situation to be in.
No, I don't like talking about these kinds of things, and it'll always come up. I actually, part of the research for this, I have to watch these kinds of things, and it just makes you wince every time. It's a heck of a hit. Even the commentators, they're all sort of quite jovial and oh yeah, so and so's doing this, and here we go. Oh, in the car, and then they see the replay, and it all goes very quiet because it was a heck of a hit. Because you were doing. Well, I don't know how fast you were going. I remember Rob Gravett saying they were going down the Conrod Straight in an RS 500 at 189 miles an hour, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
It wasn't quite as fast, but it wasn't slow, was it?
It looked like, no, I don't know, it was fast enough.
Yeah, exactly that. Obviously, recovery took a while, but you signed a new deal with the team and everything. But I think was it 2 or 3 races after the accident, it was 2007 when you'd made your comeback, you managed to get up on the podium at Sandown, which is obviously quite a tough thing. I mean, after what you'd been through with the recovery and the injuries, that must have felt like almost like it's all been, maybe not like it's all been worth it, but there's definitely been a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. From memory, I guess not so much relief, but just after an accident like that and the comeback, I mean, it was hours. Put it this way, it was probably a 4-month recovery, and I literally, it was, do you want to be in a cast, up to your neck for a month, or do you just want to sort of lie down and have a sleep for a month? So I opted to just zone out for a month while everything healed up, and then when that happened, and when I took all the casts off my legs and things like that, then the recovery time, there was a lot of walking around the swimming pool and just trying to learn how to walk again, and so it was because everything had wasted away. So it was big and hard for the family, and when those things happen. But so we had a lot of support from a lot of people, so we managed to get through. So when we got back and got back on it, to get some results straight away was really good. And because there's things you go at the time, well, maybe that's it, maybe I'll just call it quits, and do I really want to go through that process again when it goes wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just that kind of indication of your thought process of, yes, I do want to go back and give it a go and get the podium. I
mean, I flew when I was much better. I flew back to New Zealand, and we had a little Toyota Supra, and I got my dad to take it out to the track, and I just did half a dozen laps in that car around the track just to see if mentally I was okay. And within about 5 laps, I was flat out everywhere again. So I thought, I'm ready to go back.
Excellent. That's what we like to hear. No, I mean, we mentioned Dave Brodie earlier on. I mean, he smashed his leg to bits in 73 or something at Silverstone. And he overheard them saying they were going to take his leg off. And he went, "Don't you dare." And he just said, no, first thing he wanted to do was go back racing. So I don't know how you guys do it.
No, me neither. But there's obviously something inbuilt there. So stupidity, I think.
Yeah, it's I've no idea. I couldn't possibly comment. Unfortunately, though, 2008 there was another big one. Again, I don't want to talk about it too often because it was practice for Bathurst, wasn't it? Again, I've seen the footage, and in slow motion it looks quite innocuous almost, but obviously at full speed you realise how. And it was coming. Was it coming down off the mountain? No, or was it? I can't remember. It was the.
No, it's McPhillamy, which is the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
So you sort of
was it
the throttle jammed open. Yeah. So as I got to you come through the grate, they call it, and then up to McPhillamy, and as you come up there, you're flat out until you get to the top, just about. Then you lift off and then hard back on it. So when I come up to it, it was like you just have one of those feelings. It's like something doesn't quite feel right, but I didn't take my foot off the throttles. Funny how that goes, isn't it? It's like, so it kept my foot hard down. As I got to the top, I lifted off, and of course the throttle was wound right. It was just full throttle, wound right open. So
Wow.
you have a split second. People said, "Well, why don't you turn it off?" And you got a ton of car,
Yeah.
And of course it just shot me straight off and went straight into the wall at the top of McPhillamy. So, and about that time you think things don't happen twice, do they? And you
Yeah.
can and it did, yeah. So,
I mean,
and this one was worse because it was quicker. It opened up a lot of the sternum, and I smashed all my feet. It was hours of surgery to clean all the bone out of my feet, and
oh
yeah,
God.
it was just and all the time you're thinking, can this how did this happen? Can it happen twice? So,
Yeah, yeah, sure. And I think a part of it was just bad luck as well, because it was a relatively small gap where there was no barrier. It was just there was no tires or anything. You just went straight into the
no, so I found all the places they needed to plug up. Yeah.
yeah. So I think if you'd been able to get left a bit, you might have been okay. But it was just
It's right. It did,
um,
just did. Yeah. So anyway, hey, we survived. We survived. It was a long recovery, and at the end of that, the team said, "Look, would you like to come back and do it again?" I sort of decided that was 2007. That was probably enough. I don't think I could have. We recovered okay, but I just didn't feel that. It was a tough, extremely tough time to go through and to
yeah,
recover from.
yeah. I thought if it happens again, you can't go through it again, and yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah, exactly.
it's like perhaps
So
it's time. But just very good, just very quick. Some happier memories though from Bathurst, because obviously it's been up and down there. You've had a couple of podiums, a podium or two finishes there. Yeah, you've come second twice. Obviously it would have been nice to win, I'm sure, but to there aren't too many people that can say they've been on the podium at Bathurst for the Bathurst 1000, and you've done it twice.
yeah,
It must be a nice little thing to have, because obviously it's the biggest race in Australia, isn't it? So
yeah, it is. It is. It's the grand final for motorsport in this end of the world. So yeah, to, you know, to, every time I went there, I think I went there 19 times
yeah,
over
I've
my
got
career.
19 times and 17
Yeah,
starts. Yeah.
that's it. So two podiums are not very good. could
It's been
could
more than I'll
could
ever
have
get.
done better. Could have done better. That's what on my report card should say. Could have done better.
Uh,
Lots of those 18, 19 times in there with a shot. I think pretty much every time we went there, we were in contention. It's just mechanical problems or whatever. So it just didn't fall our way. Both those
yeah,
times, 90, 99 and whatever it was, 1990,
2002.
1990,
Yeah,
and
I've
then
got
99.
2000. I think it's
Yeah,
2000.
and 2000, we were always on to win it. It just didn't fall that way at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Just a couple of things I do want to talk about. Two laps that were done. I mean, you raced with Rickard Rydell in, I can't remember exactly when it was, but 1998, he put a lap in the Volvo, which
Yes.
everyone just thought, I mean, I've had Rickard on here, and he said when he thinks back to it, it's like an out of body experience. He can see it on TV, but he can't remember doing it. It
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
an astonishing lap, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. I think for Super Tourer to be at that time, I think V8 Supercars were doing 12s or something, 10s maybe,
Yeah,
and he'd done a 15, I think. You know, some it was
it
yeah,
was.
brilliant time for such a large track. 2 litre car against a 5 litre car. Yeah, it would go through the corner so much quicker in the Super Tourers, but yeah, it was an astonishing time.
Yeah, it was amazing. And weirdly, just 5 years later, it was eclipsed by our good friend Greg. Greg Murphy. He did what people think couldn't be done, didn't he? He sort of got under the time, and it was just,
that's right.
you could see his reaction. I mean, everyone's reaction afterwards. Was it John Boward put it on pole, and he was like, "Yes, I've got it. No one's beating that." And he's in the garage, just like.
I know. I was there that year, and I think it was 2006 or something, and I think it might have been 20. Yeah, I think it was 206.
Yeah.
From memory, but the closest anybody got to that was about a 208. So, and I think Greg missed a gear coming down the mountain as well. So probably didn't cost him any time. But yeah, where that time come from, and it's one of those phenomenal lap times, that and they're only going a little bit quicker than that, now with completely different cars.
Yeah, you remember just like Greg's celebration of doing it. It was like he'd won the race. It was.
I think he did. I mean, once again, everything was perfect, from that point of view, and he showed what could be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very impressive. I mean, I'm no expert on Bathurst, but even I know that was it was unreal. Just very quickly, before we've run over a little bit, just a couple of things. You've always been very sort of proud to be representing your country, representing New Zealand. You've had the Kiwi and the flag and everything has always been on your overalls. I saw you were the first ambassador for New Zealand Made, which is a very cool thing to be part of, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Buy New Zealand Made, and a lot to do with the business that I'm in now, which we produce motor oil, and we're the only company in New Zealand that is blending oil products. So we're proud to carry the Buy New Zealand Made logo on all our products, and as you said, on my helmet and on my suit as well. So I've always been a proud Kiwi since day one, and there's always been something New Zealand on me or my cars.
Yeah, fantastic. I did see something actually. It was a speech that you did. It was for by New Zealand Made. And there's a great line said, "You've always spoken about self-accountability, and that kind of a thing." This has come up a few times. It just feels like certain drivers, not all drivers, but some of them, they're very quick to point the finger. Oh, it's someone else's fault. He ran me wide. He did this. He did that. I did, just with some drivers, self-accountability isn't their strong point, shall we say. I mean, is that something that you've noticed? It seems like you, I hate to say it, the old school guys like yourself, and even further back, you just seem a lot more honest than some of the drivers these days. You have to look at yourself, don't you, first?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's got better. Personally, I think if I look at the younger guys today, they're probably too honest, with their comments, and they are very quick to say, "Hey, I was to blame. I may have had my days, but I always tried to find someone else to blame on if I could." but yeah, you always got to look at yourself first and start there. But so I'm very impressed with majority of, it doesn't matter if it's Formula E or Formula One or touring cars. Most of the guys are pretty quick, and they make an error, they go, "Look, it was my fault. I apologise." So I think that, to be honest, I think it's got better than what it was in my day.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very quickly, and a very opportune comment from Roger Wills, evening, Roger, or morning, wherever you are. Very quickly, yeah.
Hey, Rob.
We managed to ask about your experiences racing historics in Europe 10 years or so ago. Just very quickly, I mean, obviously that must have been pretty cool doing some historic racing, and it's taken off, hasn't it?
Yeah, it sure has. I've enjoyed, and when I come over to Europe, I drove with Roger and some of his classic cars, and man, that was the best time of my motor racing career, because when I recovered from the last accident, I did come across to the UK and to do the Silverstone Classic, and to share the drive with Roger in the McLaren was just awesome.
Yeah.
So and Goodwood the same. I really enjoyed doing Goodwood, and something I want to do before come back and do it 1 or 2 times before it's too late.
Yeah, no, that'd be great to see you back at Goodwood. I'm hoping to get there, so I'll have to buy you a coffee or something or whatever. If we're there at the same time, I think I owe you at least that. And Roger Wills has said we will do some more, mate. So there you go. That's
brilliant.
That's going to happen.
Roger, I will hold you to that, my friend.
And it's in writing, and it's and it's been recorded. Oh, great stuff. Where are we? Have a quick look. Okay, I think that is it. Right. What I mean, there's so many things we've had to skip over. We could have spoken about. We've got to keep it within a reasonable time limit. But we always like to end up with some sort of fun kind of ish questions. Well, fun for me to ask, maybe not so much fun for you to answer. But just very quickly, I mean, what do you most closely follow these days in terms of motorsport, and do you still follow the BTCC?
Yes, I do. I, like everybody, keep an eye on Formula One, I guess, and Formula E, because there's so many Kiwi guys, young guys around the world, pretty much in every series, from World Sports Cars to E, and now Liam Lawson in Formula One, and hopefully he'll have the opportunity to do some more races while Ricardo recovers. But we've got such a young crop coming through that are now hitting Australia, the Supercars, the Porsches. So I keep a general eye on everything just because I'm interested.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And you touched on it there. I mean, you've churned out, for a pretty small country in the grand scheme of things, a bit like the UK, you've churned out some amazing drivers over the years. Obviously, going way back, we all know the ones you've mentioned before. But you got Scott Dixon and Scott McLaughlin. I mean,
I know.
I'm pretty sure Scott Dixon is probably the most underrated racing driver, probably in history, in my book. I mean, he is so good. And it just makes what Alex Palou has done this year even more impressive. You've got Shane van Gisbergen as well. I mean, he's one of the hottest properties in world motorsport, isn't he, at the moment? He is. Fabulous,
and it's great to see. It's great to see him. I mean, he's been in supercars for, I don't know, coming up to 2 decades now. So it's kind of great. He started very young. Yeah, and then to get this opportunity to move to NASCAR, I mean, it's, I think, a great move for Shane, and he'll like he's done with everything he's driven, he'll he's already got to the front of that series already, hasn't he?
That was just kind of knew it was going to happen, didn't you? Like on a road course.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, they did the homework right and picked the right event to showcase, and but he'll get the oval sorted out pretty quickly, and he'll be a full-time runner in that NASCAR series. So we've got Kiwis always punch above their weight, and mainly because we have to. I think it's all about when you're coming from down here, you've got to make new connections, and you've got to stand out. And people always say to me, why are the Kiwis so good, and Aussies as well? And I think it's got a lot to do with that.
Yeah, I think as you sort of allude to, you're a long way out the way, I guess, in the global sense, in terms of geography. So you've got to, as you say, got to stand out. Just very quickly, the NASCAR thing. I went to the Indy 500 last year, and we stayed in Chicago for a few days. And I was really annoyed because if we looked out of the hotel window and off to the right, that's where the circuit was. We were like, I wish we could have timed it much better, but never mind. But
next time,
fantastic for him to win it as well. Okay, did you have a favourite driver growing up when you were young?
Well, it was once again, it was dominated with Kiwis. Bruce McLaren, Denny Hulme, and I had the opportunity to share a car with Denny in the early days in a little BMW with Bill Bryce, and he was grumpy. Denny, he was grumpy. He was like, he said to me, and I don't remember this clearly. He said, "You're going to start." He said, "But you make sure that I get to drive today, and if you don't, you're in trouble." So basically, stay out of trouble, you know. So and Denny was a great help to me in the early days, and the help with the driver to New Zealand, driver to Europe, and he was gave me a lot of great advice, and great to be around him at the time I spent with him before we lost him.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously he was lost at Bathurst as well, but it was a heart attack, wasn't it? And yeah, I know. Yeah, very sad. No, lovely. Have you got a favourite car you've ever raced?
Yeah, the winning cars.
The ones that the ones that win.
The ones that win, yeah. Look, the Mondeo's right up the top there, because even and taking it to Brands Hatch and driving it at Brands Hatch, I mean, the car's still a delight to drive. It's a very basic car, but did it do its job in its day, and it's still a pleasure to drive that car. 30 years on.
Brilliant. Love to hear that. Love it. Excuse me. Did you have a favourite circuit that you raced in the BTCC and one that you raced in Supercars?
From a challenge point of view in Supercars, it was always Bathurst. Just from a challenge, and in the UK, there's I think Donington, to me, not only because I had a lot of success there, but it's such a fast-flowing international track. It's like driving on a billiard board, whatever that feels like, but it's very smooth. And I always, and particularly the longer track, the bigger the track, the better. And
with the loop,
Donington always provided that.
Fantastic. Just a little bonus one here from Roger Wills. What's the scariest car you've ever driven?
Roger, probably your M1A. I think it's M1A, M1B. Probably the most, I don't know how those boys raced in there with Bruce and those guys. And Roger, I don't know how you handled that car, but I tell you, I could hardly hang on to the handlebars. It was very heavy, and of course the big, dog gearbox, and so probably your McLaren was probably the scariest car I've driven.
M1B.
But enjoyable.
There you go. He's just said M1B. I think he knew
M1B.
that was coming. I reckon that's why he asked it. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, very quick. What we got here? Great line from Dick Johnson. He said, "The only thing you ever get from looking back is a sore neck," which is a brilliant line. However, looking back, is there a series that you would like to have had a really good go at? Would it be next IndyCar or NASCAR or anything like that?
Probably in the day would have been to go and do the European touring cars.
Okay, yeah.
That was probably in the DTM series, and in the time those cars were. That's probably one thing. I did pursue it a little bit, but probably not hard enough. And because they were brilliant cars, and that would have been a great step from what I was doing to, back heading towards more the single-seater type touring car. So if there's one series that I would have liked to have done, it would have been a DTM series.
Yeah. I think in the area you're talking about, I think we all recognise it's like the golden era, the real top era of it, which is fantastic. I did have a question came in just before we came on air from one of the followers. He says, "What's your best memory from being in the BTCC, whether it be in a race or whether it be larking around the pits with someone?" Or
the best one's marrying my wife.
Hey, there you go. But not the stag do.
And the stag do, yeah. Thanks, boys. Still struggling for that today. So, yeah. Well, I mean, probably originally getting the contract. Like all of a sudden from going from floating around the world to trying to have a career in motorsport, and then being offered the lifeline from Andy and Ford to come and do it, and that's probably the most exciting news that that I ever received, and of course, as it turned out, was just an absolute bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you found a home for a while. Yeah.
I found a home for a while. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Somewhere
lovely.
I could, somewhere I could call home.
Yeah, lovely. Right, one more question, and it's a real pain to answer because there probably is no one single answer. We might ask it. It's always the last question. You've raced against many excellent drivers. I mean, I've got a list here. I don't know if anyone can see that, but that's a big list right there. I'm just going to name some of them, the guys that you've raced with and against. Obviously, Johnny Dumfries, Alan Berg, Will Davison, Rick Kelly, Cleland, Alex Tagliani for a while, Jamie Whincup, Jason Plato, Rydell, Reed, Menu, Muller, Morbidelli, Harvey, Beeler, Thompson, Tarquini, Chicotto, Soper, Warwick, Garth Tander, Joe Winkelhock, Lowndes, John Bauer, Damon Hill, Tommy Byrne, Vassar, Prio, Greg Murphy, Mark Scaife, DME, Seaton, Johnson, and even Wayne Gardner. You had a few races against him when he was in the from 2 wheels to 4.
Good party boy, Wayne. Yeah,
love him. Is there any driver who, of those or any others, who you always thought they are special for whatever reason, whether it be hardest, toughest, most stubborn, quickest, most annoying, whoever? Is there anyone?
Hey, something, they all fell into that bracket. I mean, you're talking about, and that's probably a quarter of the people that were involved with and raced against, and
I think the printer ran out of ink.
yeah. And then look, it's from a teammate point of view, always enjoyed Jeff Allen. Great driver, really good to work with, easy to work with, shares everything. So there's, Rickard Rodell, when we shared the car at Bathurst, I mean, respect for Rickard as one of the best, or the best touring car driver ever. So the list just goes on, and respect is there for everybody. At the end of the day, they're all competitors too. So if you can get past them, that's what you do, and you make life hard for everybody at that particular time, because you're all trying to achieve the same thing, which is the result for not only yourself but the teams you're driving for. So I remember probably growing up with, I remember being at the Wellington Street Race, and I was driving a Sierra, and I was pretty new to. I was driving. I can't remember who I was driving with. Tony Longhurst, I think, and Peter Brock went past me, and the Wellington track was quite a flat track, and he went past me on 2 wheels, and I thought at that time, and you had one of those light moments. I went, that's how you drive the car, and it stuck with me, and I sort of, from that point on, it's how I drove the car. If I couldn't get it up on 2 wheels, I wasn't trying hard enough. So there's a little story that there's millions of those stories, but in my early days, that's something sticks in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also, I think to mention, to end an interview with someone from your end of the world, to mentioning Peter Brock, I think it's probably quite appropriate, because absolute legend. I just want to say one little comment, which is going to be a lovely little end to the interview here, from Nicholas Bradley a few minutes ago. He said that Paul is one of, if not the best touring car driver ever. You are fondly remembered here in the UK, and you're aging well. So please come back to the UK soon. I think we can all echo that.
Thank you. It's very, very kind, and the UK has always been my second home. Patsy's British, and there's 2 British kids, and so we're backwards and forwards obviously the world had a bit of a holiday for a few years, but
Yes.
we've come back now. So we're going to make it every year. We're going to be back up, and I want to, as I said to Rog, thanks Rog, come up and do Goodwood and a couple of classic races. And if Brands Hatch works out again in the future, then I'd love to be part of that, because it literally was, for me, it was like time standing still, and just great to be involved in and around that, the best part of my my motor racing career.
Fantastic. And if it happens at Brands, I think there's going to be many thousands of people looking forward to it. So hopefully it can happen. Right, we're going to wrap up, guys. It's been 2 hours. As always, it's absolutely flown by. Thank you for sticking with us. Apologies again for the late start. Thank you to everyone who's put the comments in and asked the questions. I hope we've covered most of it, if not all of it. There's been so much to cover. It's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you, guys. And obviously, Paul, thank you so much to you for getting up so early and coming and having a chat. It's been absolutely fantastic speaking with you. So yeah, thank you very, very much.
No, my pleasure. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing some of you next year.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Fantastic. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you to Paul. And we'll be back next week. So thanks, everyone. Stay well and enjoy the rest of your evening or morning, depending on where you are. See you later.